you like and wish to be alerted every time we release a new episode, please subscribe and like us. Thank you very much for following us. So hello everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Only some technical information, please write and send your questions on the chat using the question and answer button on the left top. Also, because of high number of participants, only speakers will be authorized to use the audio. At the end of the webinar, we will send the certificate of participation to all those participating attending to the whole webinar. The video and PowerPoint will be made available on the website following editing of the video itself. Today's webinar is about sustainable honey production and beekeeping. Our special guest today, Mr. Andrea Bajardi, CEO of Raglio di Luna, will also tell us about his own experience in sustainable beekeeping and its certified sustainable honey. Good day, Andrea. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you, Paolo. Hello, everybody.
So thanks. Welcome, Andrea, and thank you for joining us. Please save the date for the next webinar on the importance of sustainability in egg production. Case study, company Tedaldi. It will be held on the 30th of June at 3 p.m. Central Europe summertime. So I am the founder and director of the World Sustainability Organization, an international NGO which stemmed from the experience of the Dolphin Safe Tuna program and which developed two major programs, Friend of the Sea and Friend of the Earth. They represent both groups of sustainable products and services, certification standards, as well as conservation projects and campaigns. In fact, over 25% of our budget is dedicated to conservation projects. Over 1,000 companies from 100 countries have products certified by these standards. So today we talk about bees. Bees are defined as insects closely related to wasps and ants with 4 wings, gathering pollen and nectar from flowers, from which some bees make honey for food. They usually live in large colonies. Bees range in size from tiny stingless bee species less than 2 millimeters long to Megachile pluto, the largest species of leafcutter bee that you see here depicted in this image, whose females can attain a length of 39 millimeters or 1.5 inches and wingspan of 63 millimeters. These differ from closely related groups such as wasps by having branched or plume-like setae, hairs that you can see very well in this picture, combs on the forelimbs for cleaning their antenna, and venation of the hind wings. The word bee comes from the Proto-Germanic word bion. Latin, apem is instead the origin for ape or api, abejas, and other words in the Latin-derived languages. There are between 16 to 25,000 known bee species in the world. As an order of magnitude, in the USA alone live about 4,000 species, 250 in the UK. Bees appeared on Earth about 100 million years ago in the Mesozoic era of the dinosaurs. They are all members of the superfamily Apoidea and 7 families. I am providing you here with the useful description of each family and also some relevant features of the most common species, so you can better distinguish one from the other. Most species do not produce honey. Most are solitary and have no need for large food stores in their colonies, as they don't have colonies, they are solitary. Only bees in the scientific genus Apis are true honey producers. A honey bee, also spelled honeybee, is a eusocial flying insect with the genus Apis of the bee clade, all native to Eurasia and Africa. As you can see from the map, honeybees have been introduced over the centuries in Americas, Oceania, and the rest of Asia, while populations of honeybees still exist mostly in Africa. They are known for their construction of perennial colonies, nests from wax, the large size of their colonies, and surplus production and storage of honey. Only 8 surviving species of honeybees are recognized, with a total of 43 subspecies. Honeybees therefore represent only a small fraction of the roughly 20,000 known species of bees. The best known and mostly farmed honeybee is the western honeybee, Apis mellifera, which has been domesticated for honey production and crop pollination. The only other domesticated bee is the eastern honeybee, Apis cerana, which occurs in South Asia. Honeybees workers live only about 6 weeks. During the daylight hours, they gather nectar from millions of flowering plants. Unlike many insects, including wasps, honeybees do not build seasonal nests that are abandoned once cold arrives. So some members of the colony are living in the hive all year. And when cold temperatures arrive, they are unable to fly and look for food. So they store plant nectar and transform it by enzymes and dehydrating it by flapping wings into ripe honey, which remains edible over the long months of storage, a perfect food source for these cold-blooded insects. Beekeeping somehow helps honeybees in this process by means of beehives. I am here describing the structure of beehives and the main steps in honey production. Surely Andrea will be able to answer your specific questions in case you were interested to know more. The question is, are honeybees so important for nature as for man? A study published in Proceedings of the Royal Society has shown that honeybees are the single most important species of pollinator in natural ecosystems across the globe. Apis mellifera was recorded in 89% of networks in ecosystems in the honeybee's native range, and 61% of networks where honeybees were introduced by humans. The investigators also concluded that 1 in 8 interactions between a non-agricultural plant and a pollinator is carried out by the honeybee. While the study helped gain recognition of these mighty bees, it also noted that honeybees still fail to visit nearly half of all animal pollinated plant species. 49% of plant species were never shown a presence of Apis mellifera. So we still need healthy populations of other pollinators for entire plant communities to receive adequate pollination services. In fact, of the main crops grown for human consumption in Europe, 84% require insect pollination to enhance product quality and yields, e.g., many types of fruit, vegetables, and nuts. While we know that honeybees are essential top pollinators, it is interesting to assess their status, as well as the status of populations of other wild bee species. Honeybees are managed species like livestock, bred by beekeepers to make honey and shipped around the world to pollinate crops like almonds. They're also an exotic species in North America, brought over from Europe by early colonists, as we have seen. It is not on the endangered species, and in fact, it is very likely that its global population is much higher now than its original one. There is a worldwide total of 91 million hives, a 50% increase since 1961. There have been long-term decreases in the US and some European countries, but these have been made up for by increases elsewhere in the world, and numbers are going up again also in Europe. An estimated total 2 trillion managed honeybees exist on top of the wild colonies in Africa and elsewhere. So definitely, honeybees are not endangered, even though some factors could impact the populations, such as colony collapse disorder, nosema, varroa, pesticides, small hive beetle starvation, and poor wintering. When assessing other wild bees populations, the situation is not so positive. According to the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, first ever assessment of all European wild bee species shows that 9.2% are threatened with extinction, while 5.2% are considered likely to be threatened in the near future. A total of 56% of the species are classified as data deficient. There's not enough data. The report shows that 7.7% of the species have declining populations, 12 more are stable, and 0.7% are increasing. Population trends for the remaining 7.99% of bees are unknown. For bumblebees, a total of 25.8% of Europe's bumblebee species are threatened with extinction, according to the assessment. Habitat loss and degradation, intensive agricultural production, widespread use of insecticides and herbicides, urban development, climate variations are among the major impact factors. In the US, 8 species of bees have been placed on the endangered list, mostly in the Hawaii. It is very worrying to learn that some of our top pollinators are at risk, and we need to address the reasons behind this decline in wild bees and act urgently to stop it. As far as the market is concerned, global honey production has increased by 23% in 10 years, and it's constantly growing, in particular during and after COVID-19, when honey has witnessed a global growth of 9% in 2020. The market is projected to grow by 5.2% per year, at least until 2027. Consumer inclination towards sugar substitutes has increased also due to the escalation in number of diabetic, obesity, and high cholesterol patients. Production is focused mainly in Asia, 49%, followed by Europe and Americas. China, Turkey, and Argentina are the major producers, followed by Iran, Ukraine, USA, and India. The EU is the second world producer with approximately 17.5 million beehives. Italy is the fourth country in the EU, following Spain, Romania, and Poland. On average, each bee farmer in Europe owns 21 beehives, while in Greece and Spain over 100, and Italy and France 27, UK and Germany around 6 or 7. Main importers of honey are Germany, the US, and the UK, followed by France, Japan, and Italy. Main exporters are China, New Zealand, Argentina, and again, Germany, which is also a hub for distribution of imports to the rest of Europe. Honey is widely used in many applications apart from food and beverages, such as cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, which are also estimated to augment the market growth globally. Here you can see the role of these applications in the growth of the honey market in the US. The graph on the right shows the main players, the main companies in comparative market analysis. In an effort to promote sustainable agriculture and farming, our organization, the World Sustainability Organization, has developed a number of certifications standards, and since 2018, it has certified products of different origins, including rice, quinoa, oil, wine, tomato, fruit, eggs, cheese, and other dairy products. Recently, we have also introduced a standard for sustainable honey production. These will be available at the link by the end of today, and they have been used to certify our guest company today, Raglio di Luna. I will now pass the microphone to Andrea Bajardi.
Okay. Hello, everybody, again. And I am Andrea Bajardi, the CEO for Cascina Raglio di Luna. I am a beekeeper, but also I am a teacher, and I really like to talk about bees when I have the chance with my students, with the people who come to my farm to buy the honey, and all the events that in which I am invited, and allows me to talk about the bees. So first of all, I have to say that we know bees like few other insects in the world, because they represent a productive sector generating economic interests for the humans. So we have been breeding bees since prehistoric times, and have always tried to safeguard them for our interests. Now, due to our changed interests, this cultural and economic heritage made up of handed down knowledge and the new technologies is in danger. So this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about sociability. Sociability of hymenopters, which is the group of a big group of in which the bees are, and is frequent in nature. Sociability is frequent in nature, and the interactions between organisms of a species and also between different species are very common. The fact that evolution has always favored the cooperation rather than competition between living forms, and this is what have characterized progress of life on Earth. So Hymenoptera are a really large order of insects that includes about 200,000 species or something like that. And in the group of the Aculeata Hymenoptera, those insects in which the females are equipped with a sting, the sociality has evolved many times independently. And this also appears to be due to the particular reproductive and the sex determination systems found in these insects. So the presence of a double chromosomal set in females and the development by parthenogenesis of unfertilized eggs, which leads to the development of haploid males, represents a factor that determines various parental asymmetries inside the colonies. So this factor contributes to increase the relationship among females of the same generation, living all together. Sociality means mutual cooperation, communication, and survival strategies shared by members of the same family. In particular, eusociality insects has fertile castes and sterile castes, such as worker bees. Barren castes do not reproduce themselves, but direct their efforts to help fertile castes' reproduction. So this particular form of sociality has evolved only in about 20 species, and lead us to conclude that the basic unit is not the species itself or the individual, but the gene. So in the evolution of social bees, the worker has renounced reproduction to help the mother raise her sisters. So it is not the life of the worker that must be safeguarded, but the one of the mother queen. A superorganism is a system capable of self-managing and promptly adapting to the surrounding environment, thanks to the communication system implemented by the bees themselves. Only the queen lays eggs, and the progress of the deposition is anything but casual. Within the family, there is a particular sharing of the roles of worker bees based on their age. So there are scavenger bee, nurse bee, Cheraiola bee, the one that produces the wax, the guardian bee, a farm bee, and finally the forager bee. So, but what about the role in agriculture and for intra-species biodiversity? As a pollinating insect, the bee plays an important role in ecosystems and in the agrosystems. So it is always thanks to these animals that the pollination phenomenon of many species is guaranteed, allowing for genetic mixing and therefore an increased intraspecies biodiversity. So pollination is essential for plant reproduction as it is for us in terms of nutrition, of course. So, for example, if the pollination service would fail for somehow, a large part of our current diet would decrease, creating serious problems for the whole ecosystems and, of course, for the mankind. So sometimes people ask me, where does beekeeping come from and where is it going? That's a really hard question. Beekeeping has always been a particular activity capable of producing economic interest. The specialization of different techniques linked into the regions of the planet have developed this activity for centuries. After all, undisturbed, has managed to evolve and refine in qualitative and quantitative terms. In recent decades, however, we are facing a change that it is difficult to perceive in daily life, but sadly current in some sectors. And so we are producing an ever-increasing flow of freight, transport, handling, stuff. This flow does not only concern goods, objects, but also animals and plants, both consciously or unconsciously. And this means that species belonging to different continents find themselves in a short time, maybe just a few days, having to survive in a new continent, a new environment. The adaptation of these species can be difficult and become extincted in a short time, or it may be able to survive. Or, finally, by finding a suitable environment, the new target species can be favored and become a dangerous pest. This can be true for all living beings, plants, animals, virus, and this situation can count hundreds of examples in our ecosystems. I try to give two classic examples concerning beekeeping. The varroa destructor, a mite native to the Philippines that once it came into contact with Apis mellifera, made it its favorite target species. And this happened when Apis mellifera has been brought to Philippines. So it spread rapidly in Asia and then all over the world from the 1970s. In Italy, in the 1981 was the first time we found varroa destructor. Another example is Vespa velutina, is a Southeast Asian species that appeared in France in the mid-2000s, probably accidentally transported with loads of timber by sea. It is particularly harmful to the population of bees who have not yet developed significant defense strategies on our continent as their Asian relatives had done in Asia. So what about the global warming? How does it affect the flowering and the development of bees? This is another really hard question to answer. Global warming caused by the increasing amount of greenhouse gases emitted into the atmosphere plays a fundamental role in the new ecosystems balances that are adapting to ever higher average temperatures. In addition to the record average values, however, we must deal with increasingly extreme weather phenomena. The shifting of the seasons forward, the return of frost, drought, are all phenomena linked to the global warming that directly influences the behavior of bees, but also the flora on which the bees feed. I want to tell you about this spring in my region. I live in the north of Italy, in a region which is called Piemonte, and I want to explain what is happening in this region in February 2021. We've experienced an above average temperatures anomaly, which woke up the vegetation and the bees, and we had early blooms, especially those that are able to push bee families and let them grow in terms of quantity and stocks. At the end of March, however, a reversal of the trend and the minimum temperatures fell well below the zero. So this situation led not only to the loss of many prominent blooms such as peaches, cherries, apricots, plums, but also to the short death of most of the other tree species. In April and May, the situation normalized, always with moderately low temperatures, but by now the damage has been done. And for example, the Robinia pseudacacia, the main blossom in north of Italy, has been unable to flower. So what happened this spring will have bad economic consequences. Also, the loss of Robinia's blossom made it necessary to feed the bees that for several weeks in full development have had an interruption of flowering. And this situation has certainly compromised the stocks and the development of families in the coming months as well. Another problem is the loss of biodiversity linked to agriculture. The loss of biodiversity is a widespread and transversal phenomenon for both the plant and animal kingdoms. Let's try to think about the aspects that link biodiversity with pollinating insects. So there is a lot of talk about the difficulty of bees in relation to biodiversity. It's easy to think about it, actually. Bees feed on nectars and pollen from the flowers of some plants, mainly angiosperms dicotyledonous. In each plant species, the blooms must necessarily be concentrated in a short period of time to ensure pollination with the specific pollen. It follows that the windows of the blooms of each species is very limited, and if the number of melliferous species in an area is small, the favorable period for bees is concentrated exclusively in those periods. So we're talking about a few days or maybe weeks, not for months. It is necessary to imagine that the more an area contains a high amount of plants, the more supply spread throughout the year. Otherwise, the lower the variety, the more the blooms will be concentrated only in certain periods. So since our environments are often influenced by agricultural activities that no longer rewards the variety, but the quantity, passing from a subsistence agriculture, a little of everything, of our grandparents, to an intensive one, much of one or two crops. The bees find nectar flows not continuously. Also, the current agriculture supported by the consumers rewards those practices that aim to weed. We don't want weeds even in our home garden with the purpose to clean our environment. We want our garden as much as more clean that we can. So that environment that often represents a source of nourishment for the bees. So with these practices, which aim at maximum yield and quality of the finished product, apicides are often triggered through the dispersion of chemicals. Chemistry is now pervading all biological levels of our environments and can be found in non-target plants, species, wild animals, bees, and even in our body, in the human organism. The bees, which are insects very sensitive to the quality of the environment, are often used as bioindicators to assess the quality of an area. From the experience of Tobii, which is an urban beekeeping project active until 2019, it has been highlighted that the quality of life of bees in a city, so we are talking about a city like Turin, which is a metropolis in northern Italy, is better than living in an agrosystem. Through various monitoring, we have discovered that the biodiversity in the city is higher than the one in the countryside, and the bees have the possibility of feeding without stopping until the end of the summer. Furthermore, the absence of agricultural practices conducted through chemicals improves their health. So bees in the city are better off than those in the countryside. So let's talk about the ethical and sustainable beekeeping. It's really difficult. First of all, we should try to consider the concept of ethics in beekeeping, because the concept of ethics in beekeeping is the sum of practices that consider the welfare of animals in balance with the economic sustainability of that activity. Animal welfare is a fairly clear concept shared by society when it comes to mammals, pets, but it is such more difficult to have a shared idea of ethic and sustainable farming methods when we talk about insects. So for this topic, even the regulations are less clear and less present. Sometimes I like to say in a provocative way that beekeeping has typical characteristics of an intensive farming. Not that much due to the CO2 pollutant, but for the saturation of the environment itself by millions of bees, a situation that would not occur in nature. So this situation leads to competition with other pollinating insects, and it is the reason why I don't like locations with too many bee families. There are many breeding methods that can be considered unethical or unsustainable. For example, the cutting off the wings to the queen bee to avoid the swarming, or the artificial insemination of the queen to ensure control the characteristics in the daughters, etc. So instead, I suggest some good techniques, which are the techniques that we used in Cascina Raglio di Luna, and we believe in these techniques. So a sustainable way to reduce the use of chemicals in the beekeeping, especially against Varroa, the Varroa destructor, is possible through mechanical methods of removing the male brood where Varroa replicates most. During the good season or in stronger families, we favor brood extension techniques rather than artificial removal or swarming. We should try to limit the nourishment of families by creating stocks of honey to be given back when necessary. We must not forget that the less nourishment can be corrected by provide sowing of flowered plants. And this is very important for us. And we do a lot of sowing with flowered plants in Cascina Raglio di Luna. To improve biodiversity, it is also possible to encourage and build shelters for other pollinating insects. At the end, the practice of nomadism allows to chase the crops and the blooms from the plains to the hills and then to the mountains, and ensure a sufficiently constant flow of nectar through the season. So now I want to talk about the case study, the Raglio di Luna, which is the place where I live and where I work. We wanted to call our farm Cascina Raglio di Luna, in which Cascina means farm, Raglio is the bray of the donkey, and Luna is the moon. So we have donkeys, and we feel as stubborn as donkeys, actually. The moon, beyond making our lives companions bright during the night, has very important influences on the vegetative cycles of plants and the growth of organisms in general. So we wanted to build this place, Raglio di Luna, according to the 3 dimensions in dynamic equilibrium typical of sustainable development: environment, society, and economy. So we were born mainly to offer social activities, also through the form of association. And inside the structure, there is a kindergarten where children aged from 0 to 3 years old have the chance to know animals and walk on the earth already at the beginning of their lives. The contact with the grass, the walk in the woods, and the natural rhythms of our place make Raglio di Luna a unique experience for everybody, especially for the kids. So we also offer outdoor experience teaching projects for the schools. And this is what we farm. Our farm produces strawberries, blackberries, and honey. And we try to do this, to farm this product, thinking to the environmental sustainability. That is why we choose Friend of the Earth as an NGO certification. Initially, to favor the environmental dimension, we had to renounce the economic sustainability. But we discovered that after some years, our work became economically competitive. And now we can actually speak of a dynamic equilibrium. So in order to improve our balance, we are partner of several projects. Some of them are about the study and the improvement of the biodiversity in our area, and some other are about the connection between social and environment goals. And here there are all our friends, all our partners in this hard way to manage the life. So at the end, we certainly don't believe we have reached a milestone. We know that we can still improve a lot. Much of our work is geared towards biodiversity implementation. We do this through the cultivation of various small particles with plants capable of providing nectar flows throughout the summer, like Trifolium, Phacelia, buckwheat, And we build shelters for other pollinators, and we try to share with young people what we have learned from nature. And that's it. If there are...
Thank you very much, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Congratulations, very interesting presentation. I was particularly surprised, astonished to hear the outcome of that study on which I think it's called B2, which
2B,
which compares
means, Torino, the bees in Torino.
Yes, which concluded that somehow bees are in the city are better off than those in the countryside because of the presence of introduced plants and in the end higher at least plants or flowers diversity in the city, biodiversity in the city than the countryside nowadays. And on one hand, that's somehow disappointing to learn. We always think of the countryside as a place with more biodiversity, etc. But on the other hand, it's encouraging because it means that if we want, we can make a change. Like somehow involuntarily was done in the cities, it's still possible to make a change also in the countryside, maintaining biodiversity corridors and replanting trees wherever it's possible, and also plants and flowers which are appropriate for pollinators and so on. So definitely we can and we should and we must go in that direction. And also I was fascinating when you mentioned that one of your strategies for sustainability is the nomadic approach. I suppose I'm not, I apologize, not very knowledgeable. I suppose that beehives owners are authorized to place the beehives in certain areas which are not their property. How does it work, and what is your strategy in that regard?
Okay, there are laws that set all this practice of nomadism. So we have to communicate to our association which place we are placing the apiary, the bees. Of course, we have to know the owner of the land. We have to find an agreement with the owner of the land.
And sometimes it's public land, maybe like woods, or no?
It is difficult to use a public land, and I found it difficult, especially in the city. I asked many times to bring the bees in the cities, maybe on some buildings, but the responsible of that building, that can be, for example, the city hall or another owner. It is difficult because they don't want the responsibility of having bees on their property. So it is easier to find the agreement in the countryside. So a landowner has some land, and you can find an agreement, maybe giving him some honey or giving him some money, and he allows you to bring the bees on his land.
Okay, very interesting. So let's see if we have some questions. Yes, we do. We have a question for you, Andrea. Is your bee and honey production integrated with your agriculture production? Can this be a reference for a combined production system like aquaponics, where you join farming and aquaponics, you join fish farming with agricultural production? In your case, is bee farming with?
Okay. The first question. Yes, and the bees integrates my agricultural production, especially with strawberries and blackberry, because of the pollinating of the bees. Now, for the strawberries, it is hard to know how the bees act on the flower of the strawberry, because the strawberry grows in any case, even without a pollinating insect. But some studies has found that if a bee goes to a strawberry flower, that strawberry would grow bigger. Okay, so it's not. It is difficult to know how it is, but there are some studies on this in this way. Also, for a combination production like aquaponics, I don't know much about aquaponics, but what I think is that even in aquaponics culture, the plants need a pollinator system, a pollinator service. So there are many beekeepers that bring their bees in a specific field for specific crops to guarantee the pollinators on those crops. Also in the greenhouses. So that is a service that the beekeeper make find an amount, some money that is required, and bring the bees for just the service of pollination, not for producing honey. So are different kind of beekeeping. There are beekeepers that work for the honey. There are beekeepers that work to produce bees, to sell bees, and there are beekeepers who bring bees to the greenhouses or other aquaponics cultivation in order to pollinate the flowers.
Okay, that's very clear. Then we have another question, always for you, Andrea. After how many years did you achieve a return on the investment on beehive, I suppose, on honey production? Did the sustainable practices increase costs?
Yes, it is really hard to answer this question, but I can tell this. Every year, I know what I earn by the bees, and so I try to invest a part of that incoming money in biodiversity practices, in sustainable practices. So last year was a really good year for me, okay, for the honey. In my area, it was very good. I produced a lot of honey. And so this year I've invested some money. I put some new plants for flower. I bought some new bee houses. And so I try to be sustainable in the economic way year by year. And of course, a sustainable practice needs costs, needs some money, needs especially time, because I have to buy the seeds to soil, I need the time to work on the land and stuff like this. But I try to measure my investments on the incoming money of the last year.
There's another question that's for me. What are the benefits for companies which are Friend of the Earth certified products? Okay, so I will summarize. Basically, maybe I can show my my screen very shortly so that I can show you this slide, which somehow, yes, can you see my screen? Andrea, can you see my screen? Yes. Okay, one. So this is a sum up of the benefits for a friend of the sea or a friend of the earth company. More or less, the benefits are the same. So first of all, by participating to our project, you help conservation, because about 25% of our budget goes back to conservation projects and awareness activities. Well, then you can test your sustainability by using our sustainability index, which is available on the website, as you can see from this slide. In the area for companies, you'll find the sustainability index assessment tool, which will tell you how much you rate in terms of sustainability out of 100. And that's included if you participate to the project, but it's also free of charge for the initial months for those who want to try it. So I invite you to try it. Then, of course, the focus is the core of our activity is the certification, the third-party certification, which is in itself a very important added value for companies, because they can pass the message to consumers that they have tested their engagement to reduce their impact on the environment and to respect the workers. And so they can deploy and show the certification on their products. Then you get media visibility. We immediately carry out and distribute press releases in different languages, and our media outreachers do their best to get you mentioned on the media. You participate to video interviews. You can participate to the webinars as case studies. If you're selling to restaurants, your restaurant customers can display the Friend of the Sea or Friend of the Earth logo if they can provide basic evidence and confirm that they have sustainable products on their menus. And then for those interested, we try and arrange over the 12 months one-to-one meetings with potential interested buyers of retail chains or your target market. We provide basic consultancies over the 12 years, and we are launching online e-commerce platform to which certified products can participate. And last but not least, we organize on a monthly basis technical courses to which your company can participate free of charge. Normally, it's at payment at a fee, and you can participate free of charge and so be updated on all sustainability issues. So these are the benefits, and with this, I will move to the next question. So we have a question: how do you manage the bees during the summer season? That's for you, Andrea, because I know bees are quite aggressive during heated spells. Also, if the harvest season is during those heated days, how do you manage the apiary?
Okay, it really depends in which part of the world we are talking about. Here in Italy, when the bees have enough flowers, enough nourishment, they are not so much aggressive. Yes, during the summer with the high temperatures can be a little bit more aggressive. So I try to move them in some much fresh areas, but there must be some harvest, of course. And so that's another way to use the nomadism. For example, I during the winter, I bring my bees in a place where there is less wind and more sun, so they are a little bit warmer than my place. During the spring, I have my bees here at home, for example, and I try to limit my visit to the apiary if they are too much aggressive. Okay, so during the summer, usually it's not that important to visit the bees. Usually the spring is the season in which we have to spend more times with the bees. During the summer, we have to find the nourishment, the areas with nourishment, and bring the bees there. And also, what I do, because for me, it's the time is a problem. I don't have enough time to do all the things I want to do in my life. So I try to not to bring the bees to the nourishment, but I try to bring the nourishment to the bees. And how can I do this? I soil some plants. I try to organize to set the soil of some plants, like for example Facelia or the Phagopyrum esculentum, which is the buckwheat, are both two species that have the flower after some days. They are not a species that flowers in a season. Like for example, the Taraxacum is a flower that blooms in the early spring, and then we don't see any Taraxacum. But these species have a cycle that they born, they grow, and then they flower. You can soil these plants in many different weeks of the spring in order to have the nourishment for the summer.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you very much, Andrea. And I think we have a last question here. Can the bees adapt quickly to a new environment? I am afraid if moving them around nomadic would rather make them leave the hives. Is this case possible? Any suggested strategies to avoid it occurs?
Okay.
Is the question clear? Okay.
Yeah. No, usually the bees must be moved at least at 5 kilometers from the place of origin, because the bees can fly for 5 kilometers and come back. So if you move your bees in this range, probably the bees will come back to the first place. So you have to move them farther than 5 kilometers. In this way, the bees are not going away. They stay with the queen bee. So if the queen bee is in the hive, all the bees will stay in the hive. Of course, you have to find a place good for the bees. Okay, if you bring the bees in a worse place than the first one, they are not going away, but they are suffering, and so they can be much more aggressive. They can decrease their population and stuff like that. So when all the beekeepers.
Andrea, I cannot hear you anymore. I think somehow the connection went off. I see my connection is still good, so I suppose everybody can still hear me. Anyway, we were close to the end of our webinar, and we really appreciate Andrea's presence. I think I hope the information we provided were useful to all of you, and of course you are more than welcome to follow up and let us know if you have other questions, if you're interested in Friend of the Earth certification, if you have more questions for Andrea, if you're interested on his products. And as I said, please try the sustainability index. It's free of charge, and then we get back to you with your scoring. And so let's have a last look at the results of the poll. What are most important environmental impacts to be managed in order to produce honey in a sustainable way? And we have 10 votes for the top factor that people seem to be concerned about, ecosystem impact of honeybee introduction. That's very interesting. And also animal welfare, 4 votes, got 4 votes, as well as shipping and distribution. Instead, people seem to be less concerned about emissions and waste from the processing of the honey. Wonderful. And so I think everybody can see the results. We will send an edited video recording of the whole webinar, as well as the PowerPoints and certificates to those of you who attended the webinar. Andrea, you are back?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, my connection.
Well, it happens. As you can see, we also had some technical issues, but I think you had made the point. I don't know if you want to finalize. We already seen, I don't know if you had the chance to see it. We already seen the results of the poll, and it seems that most people are concerned with the ecosystem impact of honeybee introduction in the new areas. So I think that's also interesting for you to see what at least this group of people, professionals, are more concerned about. I think it's quite interesting. They're less concerned apparently about the processing impact. And about that, maybe just as a close-up, what do you think? Are there any more relevant impacts from the processing in terms of energy consumption, water, emissions, waste? Any issues in particular that maybe you are controlling through your production, or?
No, actually, the beekeeper, the farming with bees is a very low emission activity, because we don't produce any kind of garbage. We try to recycle all the wax, which is really important for us, the wax that the bees produces. We just use the water to clean our laboratory in which we extract the honey, and this is why we have in Italy some laws that are different from the laws that allow to produce like marmalades or transformed food. Because for the honey, it's not a transformation; it's just a preservation, extraction of the honey. There are no other work to do on the honey. We just take the honey from the hives and put in the glass. That's it.
Okay, great. So Andrea, thank you again so much for your contribution. I hope that between you and I, we have covered all the issues in a comprehensive way. And I got some, just one last question, I think. We got a thanks from Brazil, and thank you very much. So people seem to have appreciated, and just one note for the public, in case you are interested also in Andrea's production. Sometimes we have also buyers from the retail chains and so on. Of course, you can contact him directly through his website, which is in the presentation. You can contact us, and we pass your request over to him. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be in touch and see you at the next webinar. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Paolo. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to our channel to get more content about sustainability.